Hi, this is Maximilian Osinski, and you're listening to Talking Lasso.
Yeah, I believe in hope. I believe in belief. Honey, is that an ingredient or is that something you're just calling me right now? Ingredient. Shoot, I was kind of hoping it was the other one. How worried are you about the threat of relegation? Well, Lloyd, right now I'm mostly concerned with the definition of relegation. Congrats. You both just met a cool person.
On three. 1, 2, 3.
Yo. How's it going, Josh? How are you doing?
I am doing all right, all things considered. I'm not going to get into it, but I shared with you off mic that this has been a crazy week for me, and a very long episode of Ted Lasso on top of it.
Damn you, Apple, for adding to Josh's heavy workload already.
I mean, that was a nice reprieve. I just remember at like the 30-minute mark clicking to see how much time was left on the episode, and it's like, oh, there's still like 36 minutes. Yeah. I'm like, Jesus.
Guess what, dude? You're not even halfway.
This is a feature-length episode.
Yeah, there's been a few of them, actually. They didn't do that at all in the previous series, did they?
I think the longest episode up until this season was probably like just shy of 55 minutes.
Well, depending on how you view these episodes, Jason Sudeikis is either treating us or hindering us so that we have to record even later on the week to get this out for Sunday.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jason.
But hey, it brought us together again. So,
beautiful things. We were told we have chemistry, Josh.
Yeah, Tim dropped a couple weeks ago on Two Blokes on Blighty. You said you didn't remember, but it pulled a heartstring for me where Tim was just like, "Oh, the chemistry between you and Josh," and I'm just like, "I have chemistry with someone."
Oh, it's beautiful. It is a beautiful thing. Josh, before we get any further into this, let me just say that this episode of Talking Lasso contains spoilers for Ted Lasso series 1, 2, and 3, but mostly for series 3, episode 10, International Break. Are you impressed?
You don't say.
Impressed with my professionalism that I actually wrote down the name of the episode this week.
That was a really great transition into it too, because I was like, "Oh, what's Joey got to say this week?" Oh, he's doing the spoiler warning. Well, very nice.
Well, we've learned something over the last 10 weeks. Right, Josh. So this episode, I feel, was very different to the other ones. And just before we started recording, we both noticed and reflected something over this episode of Ted Lasso. And the thing that we noticed about this episode of Ted Lasso is that there is a distinct lack of Ted Lasso in this episode.
Yeah. Ted clearly has no real big storyline to talk about during this week of an international break. And just he's enjoying life, having fun on a 10-game winning streak, and just watching his players get selected for their national teams.
I actually didn't notice that Ted was barely in this episode until we spoke about it about 5 minutes ago, having already watched this twice. So I think that probably speaks volumes that it was still done quite well, and it didn't matter that Ted wasn't a big story focus. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, three seasons in, this has definitely become more of an ensemble.
Yeah.
We'll get into it a little bit more when we talk about the team, which is the second storyline we'll be talking about this week. But there's one thing in this episode that really, I'm making a memo right now, just to make sure I don't forget to mention it this week. Which did I text you last week? Yeah, I texted you last week about the thing that I forgot, which I don't remember if you edited that out or not. But the thing that was like driving me nuts, that I couldn't remember, was that Jade works in the service industry. And the reason, going back to Aaron and Dan's conversation, I feel like the reason she initially just brushed Nate off when he was trying to like flirt with her a little bit and do all sorts of the like, Nate, I think you're cute kind of things, is that she works in a serving job. She probably gets hit on all the time.
Yeah.
And so someone's trying to flirt with her. She's just like, okay, great. Here we go.
Yeah. But apparently she has a lot of boyfriends that are very dependent on her because she acts the same way with Nate away from the restaurant as well. I think, okay, so that actually leads us really nicely into the segue of the way that we're going to do this. Let's start with Nate's story. So the first note I have about Nate's story is I kind of feel a little bit like we were robbed of quite some important scenes here. and important scenes that we spoke about last week, because we start off this episode and Nate has left West Ham. And there's kind of like, no one really knows why Nate's left West Ham, and everyone's like speculating to the point where Rebecca actually asked Ted and Higgins for girl talk and gossip and why that might be. And Trent Crim has some gossip, but the full picture of what we actually get from why Nate left is I can't remember the way they worded it, inappropriate behavior at West Ham or something along those lines.
Yeah, there's rumors of inappropriate behavior, which we get a little glimpse of previously, but we also see that Rupert is maybe trying to do something different. Which there's something in this episode with the Rebecca storyline that we need to get into about, are they trying to soften up Rupert a little bit?
Yeah.
Which I also have a complaint about that, which again, I'll make a note and get into it. But with Nate, we find out that he has actually quit.
Yeah.
And he wasn't actually fired, which, I mean, that was a big surprise to me, because we were speculating that this is going to be a slow decline into Nate getting fired or quitting. And the next week he's done.
He's gone. Yeah. But like we said, they have softened Nate to the point where he is just gelatinous, and can't stand up by himself. He is that soft. And I think I really liked that they opened with him kind of just being, so although it was his choice to leave, he's obviously very depressed about it. He has worked and worked to this point where he feels like he's the pinnacle of what he wants to do, only to throw it away, to the point where he's questioning, should I have done it? What would I have done differently? And then when Jade goes back to Poland to visit her family, Nate sees an opportunity to go and stay with his parents and regress into sort of like a recluse teenager kind of mode. He's gone very angsty teenager, where he locks himself in his bedroom and food is delivered to his door and he doesn't interact with anyone. And yeah, so there's a couple of things in this story, but the main point that I took away is the scene. And when I say the scene, if you've seen the episode, you'll know which one I mean. The one with the violin, the one with his dad. Before we get to that scene, is there anything that we need to talk about? Because I don't think that there is.
Other than what we learned about Nate quitting, I don't think there's anything of substance with his storyline until you, until you get to the scene where he and his dad have a heart-to-heart.
Yeah. So the first thing I want to say is the violin scene. I put the violin scene isn't TV, it's cinema. It's so beautifully shot, handheld camera. I actually think they've put it on a slightly different frame rate. And the color grading is wild on this. It's so shot dark and very pretty, like an independent film rather than a sitcom that's been going for 3 seasons. I thought it was really beautiful. Also, did you know that it's Nick Mohammed actually playing the violin at that point?
I didn't know for sure, but I felt like it was such an innocuous talent to have that I'm like, he has to be playing.
Yeah, he is, and he's apparently really, really talented at it. I don't know what the levels are of being a good violinist versus being a terrible violinist. Well, I know what sounds terrible and what doesn't, but I mean, I'm sure I could be easily fooled into thinking that someone is an excellent violinist. But I was really impressed with it when I found out it was actually him.
I had that feeling that they were taking the opportunity to show off his extracurricular skills. And I mean, a violin is such a hard thing to pretend to play, and they were showing his finger placements, and you could hear I don't know, is it considered strumming when you're playing the violin with the bow?
Bowing? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It wouldn't be strumming. But yeah, we'll just say he's playing, and you can just kind of tell, because again, they're keeping the fingers in shot, and there's moments where it doesn't quite sound like it's 80 yard in.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's really well matched up. So you just have to kind of be like, yeah, he's playing if you're looking at those sort of things.
But what that does is that scene, he's playing, It's all shot very beautifully. Like I said, different color grades, spilling around him, loads of cutaways to the finger so we know exactly what's doing. And then you see Nate's dad is stood in the doorway, and it cuts back to reality, and Nate goes, "Oh, fucking hell, I didn't know you were there," which I thought was really funny. But we get the heart-to-heart that Josh mentioned. And it was really, really nice, and it was very well acted. There were tears in Nate's dad's eyes. I haven't got his name written down, the actor, but I think he acted it very well. My only complaint about this heart-to-heart is it was very fast. In an episode that was an hour and 3 minutes, I think it was, this whole outpouring of, I just want my son to be happy, I recognize that you're a genius, all of these things that Nate didn't know that his dad felt about him, all spilled out in about a minute. And I felt like it could have been a much longer scene, but that's, maybe I'm just a bit of a sucker for a much, much slower burn.
Or they could have done a pretty typical TV thing where you have that initial conversation where Nate's talking about how he thought his dad hated hearing him play the violin. And I forget exactly what his dad's response was.
His dad said he was shocked when he thought that Nate felt that. And then Nate said, well, you literally told me once that you hated hearing me play. And that was because his dad...
he was trying to push him.
Yeah, he was trying to push him, but he didn't realize, he wanted him to understand the privileges he was given that his dad wasn't when he was growing up. So he wanted him to be the best he could be at the violin.
Yeah. And I think from that moment on, once they have an understanding of where that was, they could cut away, and then you could cut back, and they could be in the middle of a conversation talking about other things that Nate and his dad have been trying to like find a middle ground on and an understanding of. And then you could kind of continue on where he's like, I didn't know how to raise a genius. Yeah. So you could kind of fill in the gaps on that, but you're right. The whole scene and the heart to heart was really quick. I
don't think it was too much of a hindrance to it though. I think we still got the idea. I still think it was very well acted. My only complaint, and it is like a minor complaint. It's like, if I had to make a complaint, it would be that it was a bit rushed, that conversation.
Yeah, and I totally understand feeling cheated, because those dramatic moments are kind of what we live for. Those are the real world moments where people can kind of get a little wish fulfillment, because like if there's a closeted person who wants to talk to their family and they don't know how their family's going to react, these kind of moments can kind of give them a little inspiration. One of my favorite, we're going off Ted Lasso here for a second. I've said this before on the Talking SMAC podcast, but one of my favorite issues of Spider-Man is from the Ultimate Spider-Man comic, where it's the issue after Aunt May comes home from the hospital after finding out Peter is Spider-Man. And the entire issue, there's no Spider-Man in it. There might be some flashbacks or something, but there's no like action really in it. It's just Peter and May talking, and May just trying to understand why Peter kept it from her. And it's just a long conversation, and it's beautiful. It's a fantastic issue.
Yeah.
And when Aunt May finds out at the end of Spider-Man Homecoming in the MCU, and then the very next entry into the Spider-Man story in the MCU is Spider-Man Far From Home, and he and May are just having this great Ponzi scheme where he's pretending to not know her and they're raising money for charity. I'm like, where's that conversation? I want that conversation. I want that moment where they understand each other.
Yeah, but I think that the long, slow burn and those long conversations make for such better character development, but not individual character development. It's like, I feel like Jamie and Roy's relationship is a great demonstration of that slow burn relationship. And it's why TV series, for me, like Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad, do so well, because you spend fucking forever getting to know these characters and understand their motivations and understand their relationships to the point where you're really invested in them as people rather than just the character on the screen. And I just think that maybe was missing just a little bit here.
Yeah, and I mean, they do a good job of filling in those gaps, because Nate's dad brings up the privilege of growing up in England compared to he grew up in India or Pakistan or something. Yeah. Probably India. But
no, they said in the map episode it was India.
India, okay. So yeah, they fill in enough gaps that I really appreciated what they did, but I do think you're right that they could have even gone like 30 seconds longer.
Yeah, and then the finale of Nate's story is like full circle. He goes back to Richmond. under the cloak of the weird bloke behind the shed who lets him in, and he sets up the kit room. He becomes the kit man again under the cover of darkness and leaves a really sweet note for Will that just says, "I'm sorry," from the Wonder Kid, which I just thought was nice. And I think people are going to complain. I don't really interact with Twitter before these recordings because I don't want to be influenced in what I'm saying to you. But I have a feeling that people are going to be like, well, why was he made to be the villain? Why was he made to be the villain to just not be in like the course of a few episodes? So I don't know. I don't know if you've seen anything, Josh, but
I haven't seen anything either. I've mostly been off of the internet. I think I saw a few things like immediately after because like I just went to Twitter after the episode to kind of decompress. And then of course there's spoilers everywhere because it's the internet.
Yeah. Fair enough. But I understand anyone's complaint to say, why would they make him the villain for so long only to not make him the villain so quickly? But I don't know. I don't know whether it's because I like Nate as a character. I don't know whether it's this whole thing of I really enjoy characters that have a darker side to them and are the villain. I've said before, I'm a big fan of the villain. But I've been rooting for Nate since day one, and I'm really glad to see that he is coming around back to the guy that he was at the start. Yeah.
And he'll hopefully be a better person for it too, and a better character. So we'll see.
Yeah, hopefully. Well, we'll see. So the reason we started with Nate is because he was the only standalone story in this episode. Where do you want to go next, Josh?
Let's go with the team and Sam.
Okay. The team and Sam. So as by the title of the episode, we are in an international break. So Josh, in a football season, you have club football, you have international football. Whilst international football goes on, club season stops because all the best players are off representing their country, as we saw in this. And there are 3 real stories. So we have kind of mentions of other members of the team going to represent Switzerland or Wales, blah, blah, blah. But the 3 really important ones are Canada versus Mexico, which is Van Damme versus Rojas. Their story is quite throwaway, but still quite funny. We have Jamie representing England. It's only a very minor one, but still worth talking about. And then Sam not representing Nigeria. So which one of those 3 do you want to talk about? I think they're all pretty quick, but I think we should talk about all 3 of them.
Let's get into this is one of the tweets I saw immediately after the episode. Let's get into Rani Dohas.
Rani Dohas.
Someone tweeted that out, which I thought was a nice callback to Led Tasso, where Ted just flips his switch and he becomes the mean coach.
Yeah, so when we find out that Danny Rojas and Van Damme are representing their countries, Danny flips a switch, and Van Damme is trying to still be friends with him. He sees him on the flight. He's like, "Hey, bro, do you want some chips?" And Danny Rojas has gone full villain, like full evil Zava.
We are not. Yeah, he's like, we are not teammates anymore. we are enemies.
And it's just things like when he sees him on the plane, and Van Damme offers Rojas some crisps. Danny takes the whole bag and just crunches them and turns them to dust, and then pours them in his hand. And then during the match, Danny breaks Van Damme's nose, going really late in on a chance on goal. And then they're back at the end in Richmond. Van Damme with a big, huge bandage on his nose still, and Danny's patting him on the back and going, "Oh, that was crazy, wasn't it?" I think it was a throwaway story. I don't think we're going to get anything from it, but I did enjoy it. I did think it was quite fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and I agree. It's definitely not going to be anything that's going to come back and like bite Danny in the ass or something, unless they decide that Danny is going to become a little bit more of a villain on the pitch, which I don't know. Like doesn't seem in character.
It doesn't, and I don't think Van Damme is enough of a prominent character to, enough of a central character to have a whole story around Van Damme versus Rojas. I think it was just a
with only 2 episodes left. Definitely not.
Yeah, no, I think we can disregard that. Should we move on to Jamie next?
Yeah. So this is one of the things that I was talking about, that the show did a very TV thing, which is it calls out something that maybe people don't pay attention to, only so they can pay it off at the end of the episode.
Okay.
So in this case, after the teams are announced and Sam has not been picked for the Nigerian team, Jamie walks up to Sam and he's like, "Hey, 2-4, you doing all right? You everything okay?"
Yeah, they've never called each other
like,
that at all.
Yeah, I'm like, never ever have they ever referred to each other by their numbers. Even when Jamie was being a prick in season 1, he was telling Sam to, like, he's still calling him Sam, or he's never even referred to him like as Obasanya. Yeah. He's always been Sam.
Yeah, I think I don't know that they needed to include that line. Hey, 2-4. It's very forced, but
it's just so that anyone who's not paying attention to the jersey numbers and stuff catches on to it at the end of the episode.
They didn't even need that, because the commentator. So basically, Jamie makes his England debut at Wembley, and he reveals. So underneath his warm-up jacket, he's got his jersey, and also squad numbers are announced well before the game anyway, so they would have known. But the big reveal is that it says Jamie Tart, number 24, and it's homage to Sam. And the commentator says, as if Hey 2-4 wasn't enough, commentator says, "Look at Jamie Tart wearing number 24 in homage to his friend and teammate Sam Obasanya, who did not get selected for Nigeria." It's like,
yeah,
not a lot of heavy lifting there for the audience.
And then they also cut to Sam, who's getting a bunch of like shoulder taps and pats on the leg and stuff from the team, who is like, "Hey, look at what he's doing for you, man."
It's a bit like they've gone, "Hey, Sam, you didn't actually get chosen for your international side, but you are still involved in the international break because Jamie's wearing number 24. I think if I was Sam, I'd be like, "It's a very sweet idea, but I am not playing in that game, so therefore it does not affect me that much."
But it shows that his teammate cares. And again, it's more Jamie growth.
I'm all for the Jamie growth. I love the Jamie growth.
That's what she said.
That's what I said.
That's one of the jokes from 2 weeks ago that I forgot to bring up, because Ted made he's like, "Oh, that's what that lady from the American Office said."
Yeah.
I loved it.
Yeah, we missed quite a few jokes, I think, in that episode. But we're not there to talk about that episode. We're here to talk about this one. So, yeah, Sam and Jamie. Jamie paid lovely homage to Sam, basically. And that was his whole story. Although he does make an appearance in one that we're going to talk about later, in what I think might be my favourite scene in all of Ted Lasso. So let's talk about Sam a little bit. Josh, tell me about Sam's story. What did you think?
So Sam's kind of like picking himself back up after not making the Nigerian team, and he's going to his restaurant because what else is he going to do on international break week? So he's going to go manage his restaurant. And Edwin Akufo is there,
who I really hate.
Oh, I love the performance, but yeah, I hate him.
The performance, like, I understand, but the performance, I would describe it as an on-stage performance. Like, it didn't need to be that over the top. You've got a camera in your face. I feel like it was more like a pantomime than a Ted Lasso performance.
He's going over the top Marvel villain in this one.
Yeah.
And I am here for it.
Oh, okay.
So Edwin reveals that he's going to open up his own Nigerian food restaurant in town, like 2 blocks over. He's looking for the best Nigerian chef. And he also opens up that he paid $20 million to keep Sam off the Nigerian team to the Nigerian government. And Sam's just kind of like taking it all in stride. He's just like, "You're a spoiled little rich kid doing what you do with the money that you don't need."
Yeah.
So, okay.
There was a really good line in his restaurant where Akufu introduced the Guardian. I think he said the Guardian's food blogger. And the guy introduces himself and he goes, "Hello. It's nice to finally meet you. I have heard many terrible things about you."
Yeah. And then what is Edwin keeps calling, like correcting himself. He's like, "Oh, pencil dick. I mean, I'm sorry, Sam."
I think he calls him
something to that effect.
Pinky Dick or something like that.
Pinky dick. But yeah, he keeps saying it, and then when the Guardian guy introduces himself, he's like, "Oh, hi, Pinky Dick. Nice to meet you."
And he says, "What's the line?" He says, "Oh, it's wonderful to finally put a name to such an ugly face."
Yes.
It was so unnecessary. I really enjoyed that line. But
yeah, it was good over the top villain.
Akufu, I did not enjoy too much for me. I feel like I said I liked the villain. I did not like this villain. I think he was. I feel like the subtlety that comes with being a good villain was not.
Oh yeah, there's no subtlety to Edwin Akufu.
Yeah. But yeah, that's Sam's whole story, really. That he's actually well deserving of a place in the international team, but Akugu is paying the Nigerian government not to call Sam up, and this is simply a callback to, I think it was in season 2, where he was starting up a football team in Africa, and he wanted to buy Sam, and Sam refused, so he's got this chip on his shoulder about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he said in that episode too that he'll never play for the Nigerian team.
I missed that.
Yeah, and I think that's why Sam put the Nigerian. I think he said he had the picture of the Nigerian team on his wall in his apartment, and I think that's why it's now moved into his locker, because it's added motivation every day he sees it. Oops, sorry. All right, we're just gonna roll with it again. Apologies, my dog's barking. I'm just gonna have to manage. I'm gonna mute my mic when I'm not speaking, and we'll have to go from there. But yeah, Sam puts the Nigerian picture in his locker, and that's his motivation. He's going to keep going no matter what.
Yeah. Quite a nice ending. I don't think he'll get called up. I don't think it's that important to Ted Lasso. But
now with 2 episodes left.
Not with 2 episodes left. Okay, great. So the last story we have.
The only other thing, really quickly, maybe this ties more into Rebecca. And again, sorry about the barking. That Sam runs into Rebecca in the hallway, and they have like this really weird moment where Rebecca's trying to be like consoling to him, like, "Sorry you didn't make the team," and he's like giving her that awkward like, "Hey sis," shoulder bump, and they're trying not to.
Rebecca pulls out the green matchbook again in this episode, which I was hoping we'd never see again, but we did. But it was never really drawn that much attention to it. So,
oh yeah, the Ted Rebecca stands are in full force. That's probably the only other thing I really remember from social media after watching the episode, is that the little army man being in her purse, and those two, the green matchbook and the army man, being next to each other. A lot of Ted and Rebecca fans feel vindicated that something like that is going to happen.
I'm going to tell you now, Tebecca. No, I don't like that. Red. We'll go for red. Red fans. That is not happening. Sorry, it's not happening.
With 2 episodes left, I don't think so. And I feel like they've laid out enough breadcrumbs that Ted and Michelle are probably going to reconcile in some way.
Yeah. Although, once again, 2 episodes is not very long to do that.
Well, if they go 65 minutes again, who the hell knows?
Yeah, the last episode is going to be like a feature, 3-hour, like Lord of the Rings.
I'm here for it. Although that episode, for us to record, is going to be insane.
Yeah. Well, good luck to us. Okay, let's talk about Keeley, Roy, Rebecca. The reason that these 3 are together should be a very little surprise to a lot of people. Although at the start of the episode, they start off very, very separate, but they become intertwined quite quickly. We'll start with Keeley, sorry, not Rebecca. Start with Keeley. Keeley is still getting on with life after Jack has broken up with her. Did you notice as well, international break? I might have taken this too far and thought it was too clever. Jack is international. She is away. They are breaking up, and this is where shit is hitting the fan. So, international break.
As soon as you said it, I'm like, that's where he's going with it. I like it.
But Keeley's going into work, and everything in KJPP Industries, whatever it.
KJPR.
Thank you, because it sounds like a radio. That's how you remember. is
Keeley Jones public relations.
You're a far more professional man than I am, Josh. I think so. So I don't think I know that they're packing everything up into boxes. They're bubble wrapping everything to be taken away. It's being repoed essentially because Jack's company, family, board, whatever it is, are pulling funding, and Keeley has lost everything, including Barbara, who there's a. Don't know if it's worth talking about here. There's a really, really funny joke with Barbara where Keeley goes into the office when everything is packed up, and Barbara is wearing a tracksuit that says "juicy" across the arse. And Keeley says, "I like your tracksuit," and Barbara says, "I only wear clothes that tell the truth," which I thought was.
I
good.
love that moment. It was a great character moment. It tells us so much about Barbara.
So much.
It's
so much, but it's so the opposite direction of what I would expect from Barbara.
Yeah. Oh yeah, she's gonna be crazy if they ever get her out for a night on a pub crawl or something.
Yeah, that'd be good fun. But yeah, so Keeley's lost everything and has taken to going to the pub and drowning her sorrows. Where May, the bar owner, has given her some really good advice to. I can't remember what it is. Leap into the lightning or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, embrace everything that you have and keep running with it even when you hit the top. Was the advice. While this is happening, at the start of the episode, we have my favourite scene ever in Uncle's Day, where Phoebe, Roy's sister, and Roy are sat around the dinner table, and we find out that Phoebe has organised Uncle's Day for Roy. Now, they could have done this scene in so many ways, but to make it such at Roy's expense was brilliant.
Yeah, it continues to show what he does for Phoebe because of how much he loves her.
Yeah.
He's sitting there wearing the goofy little pointy party hat, and he's just got a nice little wry smile on his face because he knows Phoebe loves it.
Yeah.
And it's just fantastic. It's another one of those moments that just show us exactly who Roy is when he cares about someone.
But the really funny part is when the doorbell goes and Jamie shows up to Uncle's Day, and he's like, Roy is like, "What the fuck are you doing here?" And Jamie was invited by Phoebe because Phoebe believes Jamie and Roy are best friends, which they both protest. And she says, "You're always talking about him and you spend every day together." And then I think Roy asks is it Phoebe asks who Jamie's best friend actually is? And he turns and goes, "I don't know, maybe Isaac."
And Roy gets really offended.
Roy turns and just goes, "Fuck off," which is great. But the joy of this scene, Roy is given two presents in it. And Josh, I want you to explain Jamie's present to Roy, and why, and explain why I want you to lead this.
So Joey wants me to lead this because I'm a sweet summer child. So Jamie gifts Roy his original England kit,
2014 World Cup.
Yeah, from his first time ever playing in the World Cup and international team. And he leans over to Roy and he's like, "And I had them replace the E with a U." And I spent the rest of the night trying to be like, "What is England? What England? What is he replacing that makes this funny?" And Phoebe then chimes in, like there's again great amazing acting from the little girl that plays Phoebe. You see her processing, her wheels turning, and then she goes, "Jamie, you owe me a quid."
Yeah.
And he's like, "I didn't say nothing." And she's like, "You made me think
so,
it."
Yeah.
And I'm like,
the joke going through all of this scene is that because Phoebe used to swear all the time and now isn't, every time Roy or anyone around Roy swears around Phoebe, they owe her £1. But Josh, you understand the joke now, don't you?
I had Twitter explain it to me. Yes.
Okay, so
I blame the American culture because we don't say that word.
I see. It's fluent. It's actually one of my favorite words because of the reaction that it gets from people. I won't say it here because You Americans don't.
We have a largely
don't like
American
it,
audience.
So, I won't say it, but it's if for those of you who don't understand, it's replacing the E in Kent rather than England. So yeah, I really enjoyed it.
It's see you next Tuesday,
Yeah, see
but with a K.
the old "see you next Tuesday" word. But that was kind of the other thing I really liked about it being the 2014 World Cup is 2014 was quite famously a disastrous World Cup for England. They didn't win a single game and they bombed out of the group stages, which was the end of it kicked off the current era of England football, which is quite successful in comparison. The 2014 World Cup was famously an absolute shambles for England. And I don't know whether they chose that one because it was a shambles and no one likes to remember it, or that's why Roy didn't keep the shirt. But I thought that was, maybe I'm thinking too much into it, but I did enjoy that.
Yeah, could be. We'll headcanon it for you.
Yeah, cool. Nice. And then the other present Roy gets is a bright orange tie-dye shirt. It's red, orange, and yellow for Roy. And it's tie-dye and it's swirl and it is just fucking glorious, isn't it?
Yes. And God, I'm blanking on his name. Roy Kent, Brandon
Hunt.
Is it Brandon Hunt?
That plays Roy Kent. No. It's Brett Goldstein.
Brett Goldstein.
Brendan Hunt is Coach Beard.
That's right. It's been a long week for me, so names are escaping me. I'm lucky I'm coherent. So yeah, I love it. He just grits it out.
Yeah.
And he's just like, Phoebe, have you ever seen me wear these colors?
Then we get one more line in this, which I wrote down because it made me laugh. I had to pause the episode. It made me laugh so much. Phoebe and Roy's sister go off because they're going to set up for a performance. And Roy's sister says, just a warning, there is an intermission. Like, get comfortable, this is long. And then the line is, it all goes quiet for a bit. And Jamie goes, your sister is fit. And Roy goes, oh, cut your eyes out. And then it cuts there really abruptly, which I just thought was just fantastic.
I stand Roy's sister and Jamie now. I want Jamie to be Roy's brother-in-law.
Yeah, that would be amazing. That would just be incredible. But the rest of the episode, Roy wears the tie-dye shirt much to his disdain, to the point where he takes it off before he gets in his car at one point, throws it on the ground, remembers it was Phoebe that gave it to him, reverses, all in one single shot, picks the tie-dye shirt back up and drives off again. But there's a scene in this, and I wanted to know if you understood the reference. When he's walking through the corridors at Richmond with the tie-dye shirt on, and there's a really distinct song, Red Right Hand is playing. Did you understand this?
I did not, but we really quickly, I don't mean to throw you off. I was distracted in this storyline because there's an episode of Scrubs. We've drawn a lot of parallels to Scrubs in the last few weeks where the lawyer for Sacred Heart, Ted, is wearing a red tie. And there's like an episode where the entire episode is about color coordination and what that kind of reacts to people. Like Dr. Kelso gives the janitor a light, like a robin's egg blue jumpsuit, and no one is afraid of him anymore. Everyone's like, hey buddy, how you doing? And Ted's wearing a red tie, and that like evokes aggression out of people. So everyone's like punching him and just getting angry with him for no real reason. And that kind of rung a bell for me with this, because everyone's treating Roy differently.
I didn't think of that. That's a very astute observation, Josh. Well done.
And it helps that I watch Scrubs like once every 2 years.
Well, I mean, the first 7 series, is that when the main cast leave, is just
8.
First 8 series are ultimately rewatchable.
Yes.
Very good.
Season 9 doesn't exist. Season 9 is season 1 of a spinoff that ABC just didn't want to call a spinoff.
But so the red right hand joke is a reference to Peaky Blinders, which is a show here about a gang in Birmingham who are like mobsters and everyone's terrified of them. But so everyone turning their head and looking at Roy as he's walking silently through the corridors at Richmond. Red Right Hand is the theme music to Peaky Blinders, and the main character Tommy Shelby is walking through the streets of Birmingham, and everyone's turning their head, not laughing the same way that they do at Roy, but it's like, we can see you. Everyone is turning, and you are the center of attention. So it's a nod to Peaky Blinders.
So that's the second Peaky Blinders reference this season, because there was also the poopy diapers.
Yes, exactly. They're definitely catering to a British audience. I recommend you watch Peaky Blinders. It's a really, really good watch.
I have heard about it, so it's definitely something that is in my purview, but I don't. I have to find the time to watch it.
Peaky Blinders, it's all set around Birmingham City Football Club, which are our team's main rivals. So just keep that in mind. Don't get too fun.
Fuck them.
Fuck them. Well done. Well put off now. Just the burning hatred of Birmingham City has got me. So where was I?
So when does Roy talk with, what softens Roy to the point where he decides he needs to write Keeley the letter?
So Roy goes to pick up or drop off Phoebe at school, and the teacher that was flirting with Roy around the time of the breakup says, I've written it down, says, she
doesn't mind picking up
picking up the mess, and then she turns to Roy and says, I hope the mess didn't cause you too much damage. And I think Roy just realizes at that point that, like, it's a mess, it's not broken. And he literally, Brett Goldstein literally stands there and goes, fuck.
Oh no, he says fudge.
Oh yes,
he says fudge because he's not going to swear on school grounds.
Well
and again, which I like that, because I saw her and I was like, you're the reason they broke up.
Yeah. and now so she's the reason that they're getting back together.
Yep. And I mean, I thought that line that she dropped was pretty good. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
I thought the whole, like, I don't mind picking up a mess sort of thing, like, that's solid. If someone was actually broken or had a messy breakup, like, that probably would have worked. But Roy, that line made Roy realize he was the mess, not him and Keeley. Yeah. He and Keeley were not the mess.
Yeah. So Roy writes Keeley a note that basically says, everything that we were going through at the time, it was never a reflection of you. It was me that was in the wrong, and that he still loves her.
And I love the fact that Keeley's like, I can't read this. Because I remember seeing how he was writing, and I'm like, that is grossly illegible for a late 30-year-old.
I mean, I can't talk. I have terrible handwriting.
Oh, I do too, but still, he wrote like that long message, which looks like it's only in like maybe a full paragraph. Like there,
but I thought that was also clever, because what they could have done was they could have had Keeley or like reading it and Roy's voiceover over the top. But she took a good like 5-6 seconds looking at that in pure silence, Roy looking awkwardly on, before she said, "I still can't read your writing," and he had to read it to her. And that was really lovely acting by Brett Goldstein. The way that the direction on that scene, where he's reading it word for word at the start, and then eventually he realizes he doesn't need to read it word for word. He just needs to say how he feels. And he puts the letter down and delivers the second half directly to her when he says, "I still love you," or I love you. I just thought was really, really, really nice.
Yeah, and that scene gets cut off in a way that is pretty obvious that Keeley went to go talk to Roy, but then we get the classic Ted Lasso thing of, we're not going to show you what happens next. But thankfully they show us what happens after what happens next.
Yeah.
This episode had a very big season finale feel, which is why I'm not too, I'm thinking that the next 2 episodes are going to be longer. Like they might be hour-long episodes, or maybe even like an hour and 15 minutes.
Yeah, it could be. So before we say, I mean, come on, you know what's happened next. But before we explicitly say what's happened next, should we talk about Rebecca's story?
Yeah, because I think that'll be pretty quick.
Yeah, so Rebecca's story starts with Rupert appearing in her office and inviting her to a Khufu's meeting about a Super League. Josh, have you ever heard of a Super League before?
I have not, but they do a good job of explaining it in the episode, which it sounds a lot like what they do or they try to do in the collegiate level of American football, which is they have like super conferences where just like the best of the best of the best create a conference and they basically hoard all the wealth.
Well, this is exactly what was proposed in real life probably 3 years ago. Probably around the time that this series started filming, because it was mid lockdown, and all of the big teams in the European leagues got together and said, like, we're going to make this, and the fan backlash was so massive that all but three of them pulled out in a matter of days, and it got to the point where people were outside the grounds during lockdown when there was really strict like distancing rules, stood outside the grounds chanting and protesting, where club ambassadors, ex-players, current players, managers had to go out and calm the crowds down. They were that against this Super League because promotion, relegation, and kind of being able to work your way to the top, I think is such an intrinsic thing in football, and which is why I loved Rebecca's speech at the table. What are you doing? Stop it right now. And then explaining that football is for the fans. And it's the second time that they've done this. If you remember, Ted says something along the lines of, it's their club, we just borrow it for a while. And I think that the writers of Ted Lasso have obviously sat down and looked at what was happening around them in football, because football doesn't just happen on the pitch. It's everything around the pitch as well. I always say it's like the biggest, most live soap opera that you've ever seen is football across the world. Essentially, Rebecca gets invited via Rupert to this meeting to instigate a Super League. There's a few good things in this, which I've spoken about already. I actually quite liked Rupert in this episode. I think the softening of him was really good.
I found a lot of this episode interesting with Rupert, not just from them trying to soften him, like maybe something Nate did triggered something in him finally. Or maybe it was just more for Rebecca's story to kind of offer these moments of softness to him, so that we can kind of be like, oh, this is what she saw in him. But there's one thing that really bothered me about this episode, and that's the fact that Rupert is not technically the owner of West Ham. It's something that keeps like creeping into my head as I'm watching this, but as we do the podcast, I forget. But this one really stuck in me because Bex is the owner of the team. Rupert in the Milk Sisters episode mentions the fact that Bex bought the team, and because through their divorce, he's not allowed to own a team.
Right. Got you.
So he's head of football operations or something, or he's acting as owner in some way because Bex doesn't really want to do it. And I guess everyone's just kind of like turning a blind eye to the fact that Rupert's really running the team or owning the team while Bex is the owner on paper.
Yeah. I hadn't thought about that at all. That hadn't even occurred to me. Bex kind of has disappeared into the ether ever since the first few episodes.
She and the baby. Yeah.
She and the baby. But valid thought. But Anthony Head, who plays Rupert, really gives us like a spectrum of villainousness in this episode, where he walks around Rebecca's office like he still owns the place. He shows his manipulation by doing exactly what Rebecca said he did in the episode. Do you remember where they were introducing Zava and made that person feel like they were the most important person in the room?
Mm-hmm.
And if you notice, so we're skipping around quite a lot here. Akufu gets a bunch of owners together and proposes a Super League, and Rebecca says, like, no, what are you doing? Being ridiculous. This football isn't ours. This is how you fall out of love with the game. This needs to be for the fans.
And she asks them outright, like, how much more money do you need?
Yeah, very true. And then Akufu says, that was a lovely speech. Now who wants to make a lot of money? And then the next shot is him storming out of the room. And we cut back to the owners all covered in food, where Akufu's bodyguard has obviously thrown loads of food all over them. But if you notice, Rupert's eyes in that scene don't leave Rebecca's. they make her feel like she is the only person in that room that matters. And while all the other owners are really pissed off, he waits to see Rebecca's reaction and he mirrors it. So he's living up to exactly what Rebecca said he would in that very early episode in the season with Zava there. And I thought that was really clever and really well done and really well acted by Anthony Head throughout the whole thing.
And then one other thing, which maybe you're reading into it in a way that I didn't, but I thought they were really trying to make Rupert seem more like maybe he's dying. I don't know. But when they first arrive for the meeting, Rupert's new assistant arrives and she's very homely. She's not a supermodel. She's not the same one that we saw him flirting with, having an affair with earlier in the season. So I'm wondering if maybe they're trying to show that there's either these allegations of misconduct going on inside West Ham have changed Rupert, or Nate has changed Rupert in some way. But something is going on with Rupert that has caused him to really change the way he at least presents himself publicly. And he's like, I think the assistant is a way of showing that he is taking steps to make sure he doesn't put himself in a bad situation again.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think the way I looked at it was probably Bex's doing, because she will have found out about the supermodel, the affair, the two supermodels at the Honey and Jam or whatever the bar was called.
Bones and Honey,
not Honey and Jam. But yeah, I think you're right. I think there was a real softening of Rupert. I never got the impression that he was dying.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, maybe there's something, because without Bex there to give some kind of indication that she has found out and is basically giving him an ultimatum, I feel like these are personal choices of his.
Yeah, true. But there's a key scene with Rupert, the final time we see him in the episode, where he notices a piece of food in Rebecca's hair and he takes it out and then he tries to kiss her. So he's not changed at all, really. But so Rebecca dismisses his advances. And I should have said sorry at the start of this. All throughout this episode, Rebecca's been trying to get in touch with Keeley to talk about what's going on. But Higgins gives some advice. Is it Higgins or was it?
It was Higgins, yeah, because she's afraid of being the only woman that they invited because they needed a woman to make the thing look legitimate.
Yeah.
And he's like, who cares? You have a seat you're being offered a seat at the table. Take it and see what comes of it.
But someone says to them, they're all just little boys. And I can't remember. That wasn't Higgins. Who said that?
Keeley texted her at like they're about to eat. And she's like, hey, sorry, a whole bunch of stuff's happening. This is clearly after the whole Roy thing happened. She's opening up to people again. And she's like, just remember, they're all a bunch of little boys.
But so this was my main gripe with this section. We saw Rebecca doing her ritual of making herself big and scary in the mirror. But when she looked in it, it was a little girl in the mirror looking back to us. Very, very, very literal. You didn't need that, I don't think. And then when she goes to tell off the group of owners, who are a bunch of old white rich men, she sees them all as infants around the table. And you didn't need that. You just said they are little boys, treat them like little boys. And then she goes, stop it, all of you, like she's telling them off. You didn't need to see them as children.
She had that gleam in her eye that Hannah Waddingham can pull off. Like you can just look at her face and let her do the face acting, as we've talked about. It's part of our drinking game for this show. She can do the face acting. You can see the gleam in her eye where she's like, yeah, they're all just a bunch of little boys. And then she can do the stop it, all of you, and talking to them like little boys, and like, oh, we get it. She's talking to them like little boys.
Yeah.
Like the moment in the mirror, I really enjoyed, because she's very clearly having a panic attack, and she has learned to manage it, which is how she was able to help Ted back in season 1, and how she's able to recognize the signs of it. And I liked that part a lot, because it showed that she is still dealing with it. It's not something that's cured. Therefore, it's something she's always dealing with. And I like that a lot. But having the literal scene of her sitting around a table with a bunch of boys in suits, that part, I think that was a little too heavy-handed and like, hey, look, symbolism.
I don't think the mirror one was needed. Personally, I don't think the mirror one was needed. I think Hannah Waddingham is a good enough actor to pull off showing signs of panic before completing her ritual in a mirror before going into this room. She showed it already when she was looking at the outfit she was wearing. There was obviously a lack of confidence within it before she did the ritual, and then an increase in confidence after she did the ritual. I just felt like seeing a little girl staring back at her in the mirror was leaning back to this supernatural psychic element that it belongs in like Supernatural or American Horror Story or somewhere like that. I don't think it belongs in Ted Lasso.
Yeah, I can see that. I can agree with that.
It was too literal there.
If you wanted to still do something and have her show, if you wanted something visual to show her having this panic attack, you can, like, when you have the moment where she's like clutching her chest and breathing, you could like flash back to moments with Rupert throughout the show and have her like do the breathing exercises, and you can see her maybe like shake a hand or something, and just kind of then she does her thing where she makes herself big.
We have seen so many panic attacks in Ted Lasso. They know how to do it by now.
We get it. We know when we see one.
Essentially, the next thing that happens is we see that Rebecca or Rebecca goes to Keeley's house, still covered in the food that was thrown over her, and announces that she managed to get all of the owners to step down from the Super League, which, I mean, was pretty obvious by the reaction of Akufu, but it was never explicitly said. And then she announces to Keeley announces that Jack has pulled the funding. There was a really funny moment where they said, well, how much? Rebecca said, how much were they funding you?
I hate this trope so much. I hate it.
And Keeley pulls out a Post-it note, starts to write the number, and Rebecca goes, what are you doing? And she goes, well, this is what they do in the movies.
And they hang a lantern on it every time in the movies too.
Yeah. And then Rebecca looks shocked at the amount, and she's like, I know it's Keeley's like, I know it's a lot. It's so much money. And Rebecca goes, I think I've probably got that much on me right now. And so Rebecca's going to fund KJPR.
Yes.
And that's really lovely. And then she breaks, and actually Rupert tried to kiss me. And Keeley's like, what? And she does this whole speech about you'd have to be scraping the bottom you'd have to be scraping the bottom of an emotional barrel to go back to someone that you've been with before, blah, blah, blah. And just as she's saying this, Roy is wandering slowly down the stairs in Keeley's dressing gown. And Keeley's still going. And the way that Rebecca and Roy don't say a word to each other, they just salute each other on the way out, I thought was really, really nice.
Yeah, Rebecca just gives him that look of like, you finally got out of your own way, which is what she said to him last week. And to kind of wrap up the episode, we see the team coming back from international break, and Roy is now wearing a like black and dark gray tie-dye shirt. It's showing that he's opening up to new things, and he's still Roy underneath.
It was good. But then we also had Ted and Rebecca, and the announcement that Rebecca doesn't care about beating Rupert anymore. She still wants to win for the team, but it's not about Rupert anymore. And then she spits tea over Ted, and that's the end of the episode.
Yep. I like Ted's comment about how after Rebecca says, it feels like it's just ceremonial at this point. And Ted's like, as long as that tree piss doesn't get in my mouth, I'm okay with it.
He said he quite likes it, which I thought was quite good. But yeah, that's the end of the episode. What did you think, Josh?
I enjoyed it for the most part. It did feel long in points. But I think overall, this is probably one of the better episodes where everything feels like it serves a point. Even Danny and Van Damme, like, I know it's an E plot in this episode, but it feels like an E plot, and it doesn't take up too much time, and it doesn't stay too long. So I feel like that was a really good episode. I would give this one probably an 8.5 on our scale.
I would agree. I think that everything, as you said, kind of felt like it carried weight within this. I think personally, having rooted for Nate since day one, as I said before, I love Nate's story. I loved the reconciliation with the dad, even if it was a bit quick. I'm a bit of a sucker for a very well shot scene here and there, and the violin scene really will stick with me after Ted Lasso. And then I think I probably would have scored this a little bit lower, but I also really resonated with Rebecca's speech about football being for the fans. I think, once again, I've said it before on this series, I feel like the writers and the actors really get and understand the culture of football, which, is really important for something like this to make it feel genuine.
Yeah, and the moment where Will reads Nate's note, I love the look of horror on Will's face when he sees that the kits have all been laid out, and he's just like, "This happened to Nate. What's going to happen to me?" And then he sees the note, and he's like, "Oh, Nate did this. How nice!" And he's just ready to roll with it because Will is a good boy as well.
Do you think we'll see more of Nate in the latter part of this, or do we think that Nate is kind of tied up?
So I'm curious. Not to go too much longer. We're getting close to that hour. I don't know how much you're going to edit out of my dog barking.
None.
I'm curious if the end game for this, if this is the final season, isn't Ted. I don't know how you win the whole thing in this scenario, because Ted's obviously thinking of like playoffs or some kind of tournament where they're like, "Oh yeah, Richmond is the best of the best." Okay. So I don't fully understand how they get to the point of like win the whole fucking thing, like Ted said at the end of season 1. But I'm wondering if they don't fulfill that prophecy and then Ted goes back to Kansas to be with his family. Beard probably stays because this is a sitcom, so people have to kind of go their own ways. That's how you get the like definitive ending. So like I think Ted goes back to Kansas, Beard stays in London or England. I think Roy either gets promoted to head coach and hires Nate to be on his coaching staff, or maybe they hire Nate as head coach and Roy sticks on as a member of the staff as well. But I think the arc will end with Nate being a prominent coach on Richmond again.
I could see it. Okay, Josh, I'm not doing a quiz for you because it's late and I want to go to bed tonight. But I do have a mad football story for you. And this one happened exactly 1 week ago. So a very recent mad football story.
How
timely. So there's a footballer called Gael Clichy. Now, Gael Clichy is now 37 years old, but in his very first season in professional football, he was part of the Arsenal Invincibles squad. And the reason that they're called the Invincibles is they won the Premier League without losing a single game over the course of the season, which has never been done since, and I don't think was done before. It's a very, very impressive feat. He was also at the time the youngest the youngest player to ever win a Premier League winners' medal, and you can only get the medal by participating in so many games across the season. So it wasn't like he was a bit part player, he was a core member of that squad. Now, he now plays in the top flight of the Swiss League for a team called Servette. And last week, on the 13th of May to date this episode, Servette were playing Sion in the league. They're both near the top of the league, so it's an important game. Servette actually won 5-0. But the mad story in this is Gael Clichy is a defender, so he is one of the furthest players back most of the time. But he managed to score from the centre circle in this game. So he lobbed the keeper. So he basically chip shot over the keeper to score in the first half to make it 3-0. That's pretty crazy. It happens every now and then. It wouldn't make it in this story, if not how he knew to do it. It was revealed that a fan of the team he plays for sent him a DM on Instagram and said, "The Sion goalkeeper, Alexandros Safranakis, likes to stand very far out of his goal. When you get the ball, you should try a shot from your own half." And Gael Clichy did it, and he scored, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah,
I'll have to look that one up.
Yeah, I'll send you a link to it afterwards if you're interested.
Yeah, definitely. I'd love to see that.
Cool. Nice. Well, that is us. Josh, do you want to do your normal hosty socials bit?
Sure. You can find me on Twitter at Josh_Scar. You can follow the podcast at Talking Smack Pod. You can email us at tsmackpod@gmail.com. You can join our Discord, which will be in the episode description. And if you have any predictions towards the last 2 episodes of Ted Lasso, shoot them our way at tsmackpod@gmail.com, and make sure you put either Talking Lasso or Ted Lasso in the subject line. And as always, I want them in all caps or I will ignore it.
Nice. I like the authoritarian nature of that sign-up. You can find me all the time in the Talking Smack Discord. It is the most active Discord that I'm a member of, and the only place I am active online, really, besides the Game Club Pod Twitter account, where you can find either me, Slade, or Tim, because we all have access to it, who thought that was a good idea, tweeting some random stuff. If it's anime related, it's not me, that is Slade. If it's shitpost related, it is Tim. Anything else, or if it sounds like it's written by AI, that's me.
All right. And in the immortal words of Ted Lasso, quoting Walt Whitman,
be curious, not judgmental.
Beautiful. Now, scram, whistle, whistle.
Scram! Whistle! Whistle!